Okay, we're gonna go ahead and open the North Shore Board special meeting with roll call.
Good evening, Commissioner Admin,
Here.
Commissioner Pratt,
Here.
Commissioner Byers,
Present.
Commissioner Webster,
Here.
Commissioner Woolham,
Here,
Chief Cowan,
Here.
Legal Counsel Matt Paxton,
Here.
and I'm Board Secretary.
okay, so we have two public comments for tonight, so I didn't know if we had people that wanted to speak at the first public comment, which would be now. Just go ahead and raise your hand. Oh, okay, so we have Mr. Marin, you have 3 minutes for your public comment.
Thank you. As I always do, I will start by reminding the board that you're elected to represent citizens of the best citizens and their best interests. These are not always the same as the fire chief or firefighters want. You have the ability to impose taxes, but I urge you to have empathy for the taxpayers. Most of them took a lot of effort to earn the money that they send to the fire department. You and your family may be doing well, but that's not the case for everyone. I ask that your legal advisor take a fresh look at the conflict of interest for some board member. This is a direct conflict of interest identified for Commissioner Admin during the contract process, still an issue. I will send your legal advisor a list of my concerns. I also hope your legal advisor reviews Chief Cowan's budget recommendations related to some of his budget asks versus the service contract terms. Under the fire service contract, it's appropriate for NFP to pay for new AV equipment for Station 51. It seems to me this is an SDFD on a facility maintenance item. Surely the once per month fire commissioner board meeting does not require this equipment upgrade. Remember, SFD accepted the NFP building capacity as a condition. It is NFP's responsibility to pay for a portion of NFP's hires. It seems to me that NFP contract with SFD identifies payments for a specific number of positions, not for SFD staffing strategy. Why is NFP's annual contract payment increasing by 15.56% when the stated SFD cost increase is identified as 8.65%? State law RCW 4309-21073 requires actual cost recovery when contracted with other public agencies. What responsibility does NFP have to build a regional training facility when NFP already pays for all firefighter training as part of the loaded firefighter rate? Please rein in the 50% increase in spending, delay the training building construction until a viable repayment plan is in place. You can fund this project through your GO bond capacity or calculatic bonds at any time. Wait on a funding decision for replacement R51. This issue is not an emergency. You have 5 more years of service for this truck. Identify how many rescue responses are in your area, what type of equipment is really needed to address the needs to NFD, being in the rescue business at all. Finally, do not raise the NFD reserve funds. The dollars in these accounts are what make NFD financially strong, resilient, and keep NFD tax rate reasonable. Passing a levy limit may not be the lifeline you expect. I believe the voters and the district will be reluctant to provide you with additional taxing authority when you have just significantly increased our taxes and increase your budget by 50%. The voters will measure performance against the likes of Window Fire, where taxes went down in 2020. The NFP board needs to demonstrate financial discipline to gain public trust. Without public trust, we will not have support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wanted to make a public? I'm sorry, I can't see very good from here.
Stacy Valenzuela.
Ms. Valenzuela, if you'd like your 3 minutes to speak, you can start now.
Thank you. Stacy Valenzuela, Kenmore. Like most residents I have talked to, I'm opposed to the tax levy. The residents have been through a lot with the COVID, the inflation, high increases of rents, taxing for every little utility, and Kenmore is trying to raise taxes. King County is raising taxes. I think if this was a needs-based tax increase, it would be totally different, but it's not. It's about wants. So we don't need also a gas tank that large to be at Station 51 when there are so many residents surrounding that are seniors and are in complexes that are many floors. So if something happens with that fire tank, how do we get all the seniors out of the life center right behind you? The two up the street, the one in front of you. This is a high concern. I think the consortium should pay for the consortium facilities. And I think that you should wait for grants to pay for this. And I did send a grant number that is available for infrastructure improvements that can be applied for. And once the grants come through, which you could work with our legislators to get the help for the wants, not the needs, then they could be paid that way instead of going after the residents in such a hard time. We already are concerned, especially about our seniors, those with disabilities, those that are living alone, being priced out into homelessness in our community. And we need to be conscious of this, as well as conscious of what's a need and what's a want, and only take care of the priorities of what's really needed. Especially since two of the stations were just already updated. Those big are wants. And we do need an aid car up on the hill eventually, because Kirkland is experiencing high growth and Kenmore is experiencing high growth. Bothell is experiencing high growth. So the population is going to warrant that we need additional aid cards. So I wish you would take this into consideration and pull back it just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else's hand up. Amy, do you see anyone's hand up over there? Okay. Okay, if I can move on to approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the meeting agenda.
Second.
Motion passes unanimously. Now we're gonna,
Quick vote.
oh, sorry. Getting ahead of myself. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion now passes unanimously. Now we're gonna move to the continuation of the public hearing for budget, benefit charge, and other revenue resources.
Excuse me. All right, thank you. Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, actually, it's already open. So first, before we get into the work that I did over this last week, I'd like to address some of the statements that have been made. And I'd like to start off by stating that the taxpayers of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore have had a great benefit of having a very lean, fire department and an equivalent levy rate. And it's been that way for many years, decades, and it's been great, but it was too lean. We did not put the proper money into our capital replacement strategy, and it's now time to catch up. And unfortunately, and as we were talking about in the last week's meeting and so forth, it is about wants versus needs, and I feel like we've cycled down to the things that we do need this next year, and that's what's left in the capital budget, and I'll get to that in a minute. Even though our equivalent levy rate is going up, it is still quite a bit less than almost all fire departments that are out there, especially if you take away the capital replacement needs. Our proposed budget is an increase of 31% in the equivalent levy rate, but that also includes a 9% decrease in the AV. So, and if you look at our operational needs of that 31%, it's about 11%. So if you talk about the 9% AV decrease, it's not that much on the operational side. Most of our issues are on the capital replacement side, and it has been underfunded for a long time. And I've prepared some spreadsheets for you to take a look at as to what it's been looking like over the last decade. Our capital needs are the problem. It's not the operational needs. Specifically, as far as some of the statements that were made last week, comparing us to Woodinville, Eastside is a good fire department. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. I believe that they're a good fire department, but you cannot compare us to Woodinville. It's not an apples to apples comparison. Their staffing levels during the day, at least, are about the same as ours. At night, they have better staffing, and our incident number annually is about the same. However, They also have about a 34% increased AV compared to us, so it makes no, so it's not a surprise at all that they have us a lesser levy rate. You know, if we were comparing them apples to apples and without our capital needs, we'd be at about 96 cents, which is close to the, and I'm relying on what Dave Marin said at the last meeting, because I looked and I couldn't find any of the details, the specific details for the 2024 budget. So I'm relying on what was stated at the last at our last meeting. So you know, their governance model isn't the same as ours either. It's more efficient. And, you know, it's more like a merger. If we were to do something like that, then we could save hundreds of thousands of dollars annually by doing it and increase our efficiencies, and probably not even have to look at some of the additional administrative positions that we're looking at. So we're not trying to, Shoreline's not gouging North Shore. I'm not looking for Shoreline to subsidize North Shore. I'm not looking for North Shore to subsidize, you know, Shoreline. The operating costs are what I've presented. I've shown you all the details of how that's created. It's not like we're charging a profit or making, you know, any money on this. It is what it is. Specifically, as far as what was stated last week, on the revenue estimates, and it was even mentioned tonight, one of the reasons why North Shore's percentage rate is going up high at a higher rate is that we also, part of that is the revenue side of what we were estimating, and two pieces of that were the BLS transports and the GMT funding, which you may recall when we were doing the proposal, the ILA proposal, until we got into it and had experience of actually what the collection rate was going to be, we weren't going to really know what it is. Well, we estimated too high this year, so we had to reset that for next year. That impacted it. But the bigger piece is that Shoreline was carrying a lot of extra funds in our general expense fund, over $3.3 million on purpose in 2023 to make sure that we had the flexibility with the new ILA to make sure that if there were some things that popped up that were unexpected, that we had the ability to address them, you know. And so we didn't transfer some of the money that we needed to or could have at that time, and we held it. So this year, or 2024, we're able to use that money now to basically buy down, you know, some of the revenues that we would have had to generate from either the fire levy or the fire benefit charge. So I mean, those are the two biggest reasons. I mean, there's others, but those are the two biggest ones. We are adding new positions in 2024 to address overload, or we have staff that is overloaded. There's a new admin HR position. You may recall that we were considering bringing that over from the North Shore, the legacy North Shore staff, and we chose not to, only because I didn't want to overcommit on staff until I really knew what that workload looked like. And we now have a better sense, and we kind of, I wouldn't say we're back to our base level, but we're getting closer to having everything kind of settle out, and we need that position. You know, it was actually expected that we were going to do this as part of the contract, and we didn't, but now we do. There are two, there's a support services position that we're looking at, which we don't know what that rank is going to look like. A lot of it has to do with the facilities and other capital projects that we need to address. And frankly, as we went through this year, and as we started to look at some of the pieces of equipment that were broken, the systems that were broken and so forth, it was like peeling back an onion. I've shared this with you. There's like, oh, we're going to fix this, and then it revealed a much bigger problem. Problems that we did not know coming into this year. And I wish I would have been able to express this to you all throughout the year. I did talk about some of them with like HVAC and Station 54 and things like that. But until we really got into the budget season, I just didn't know what it is. Well, part of that is, you know, Chief Hochstein is overloaded and we need support for him. We don't know what that position looks like, but that's one of the positions. And the other two positions are part-time positions that are funded at $40,000 in salaries each. Not is a part-time position, so it's not the $700,000 that was stated. It's more like about $440,000 in salaries. Our revenues are maxed out. It's been known for a long time that we were creeping that way. I've got Dawn zooming in if you have any questions for her to give you historical perspective on how we funded, you know, the way we funded and so forth. This has been a known thing as we've been at the cap on the fire levy side. So anything over a 1% increase. Yeah.
Maybe you can just clarify that what you're talking about is that the fire benefit charge can't be more than 60%.
Right. It's exactly, yeah. So on the fire levy side, we've been maxed out and we can only increase by 1%. That means anything that's over a 1% increase in our needed revenues, which almost every year it's more than 1%, has to be picked up with the fire benefit charge side. And the fire benefit charge side can only go up to 60% of our operating budget. And we are pushing right up against it. We've been creeping up over the last decade. But this was a known thing that was coming. This isn't a part of the ILA contract or anything that has to do with shoreline. This was going to happen regardless, with the revenue needs of the department. And I'll show you, the percentages here in a minute.
Chief, I just interject to that, historically, over the past 30+ years, the levy lid lift has happened about every 6 to 8 years.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened in 13 years. Okay, so we've been at a historic length of not having gone back to the citizens and asked for a levy lid lift. Sorry.
And it is kind of complicated, so I'm glad you guys are both asking some questions. It is kind of complicated to understand, what those capacities look like. We're about 58%. Again, I'll show you here as we go through the document. Our MRH program is not the same as the radar program. It is completely different. So comparing to saying that we can walk away from our MRH program is not an accurate statement. It is they work together in different ways, and they are similar, but they are completely accessing different types of patients. The radar program is part of the police program, and it's for crisis intervention, whereas our MIH program is for going out there for social services and connecting people with long-term services and removing the need for the 911 call. The specific transfer that was mentioned last week of the $1.2 million for benefits is completely different than what we're looking at in the budget that I've got proposed to you. The $94,009 that is budgeted each year is for the legacy North Shore personnel that retired prior to the contract, and it's completely separate than our contract with Shoreline. The 1.2 million is to cover cash outs and so forth, for all of the North Shore personnel that came over to Shoreline. We were planning originally on adding, I'm going to talk about the firefighters. We were originally planning on adding about 5 firefighters to address attrition and needs and so forth in 2024. When we got into the budget season, the good news is that our mandatory overtimes have become a lot more manageable. They've almost basically dropped off entirely, which is great because you don't want to force somebody to stay, for overtime. However, our overtime rates are still quite high. And when we started forecasting out what we were looking at in 2024, it was higher than I felt comfortable with. And to address that overtime, I'm proposing adding another about up to 7 firefighters and that would offset the cost of the overtime. So it's not like it's additional cost above what we would need. It's just trading overtime dollars for staffing. That staffing helps improve our levels of service and gives us better flexibility with staffing our apparatus and so forth. So there's a benefit on that side. Overtime is some amount of overtime is a good thing. I'm not trying to eliminate it. I'm just trying to get it to a manageable level. So, and then one of the good things that was identified last week was identifying the revenues that we have, and I've worked with Commissioner Webster on this as well, identifying some of the revenues so it made it more clear, and I'll walk you through that as we get to the summary page. And then finally, there's 2 more things, I guess. There's been a lot of conversation about the rescue. It is a needed piece of equipment. It is a low call volume, but it's a high risk, they call it high risk, low frequency events. When we need it, we really need it. We are planning on staffing it better in 2024, starting on January 1st. It'll get used more often. And it is a critical piece, and it's a specialized piece of equipment. Shoreline, for example, has a ladder truck, a rehab unit, a wildland unit, an MCI unit, trailer. We have specialized equipment that we have purchased. We didn't ask for help purchasing it. It's a regional asset. It's an asset that helps, Lake Forest Park and Kenmore residents. All the residents or all the departments around us have ladder trucks. North Shore does not. They've been North Shore resident or Lake Forest Park and Kenmore residents have benefited from these ladder trucks, these specialized pieces of equipment. One thing that North Shore is doing is had a rescue, and it's a great regional asset for us to start utilizing better. There's not, the closest units for us are Bellevue and Seattle. If we rely on those units to come to and on an incident to do a rescue, it's not going to be a rescue. It's too far out. We need to be proactively looking at what our needs are in the region, and it is beyond just Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. It is going to be a regional asset, but it is our commitment as we work with our partnering agencies around us to be able to provide those services. We rely on them to help us, and they will rely on us to help them. So it's something that, you know, you have to consider. And then finally, you know, this is just from a chief's perspective. There's been some comments about conflict of interest, with the board, with 4 members of the board, being, identified individually. There is nothing in the North Shore budget or the shoreline budget that we're talking about that has anything to do with ALS. Nothing. So there's no, and when you talk about these budgets, there's no direct or indirect impact to any of our of the commissioners. And I just want to make sure that that's known. I've never had any conversations with any of you that has been inappropriate. I've always felt like 100% with 100% conviction that you've always put the commissioner hat on, regardless of your role, responsibilities, where you work, etc. I have, in fact, I think if anything, there's bias a little bit beyond, back towards Shoreline, but so I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, and the people that are listening, digitally as well. I've never had anything but full 100% confidence in you guys all doing your jobs as you're elected to do so. And anything that is contrary to that is just a false statement. So with that, I'd like to go through what's being proposed and then address any questions that you may have. So I'd like to start off with I'm going to start off with the fund balance tab, which is in your handout. This one, I did it on big paper, so.
Do we have handouts for the?
No, I don't. We can. You guys have a handout. You can turn it, I guess, a little bit more towards that because they do have handouts. So I'm gonna. I did a lot of work over this last week. We got updated numbers from the county yesterday and even today. So this is brand new. This is not what was posted on the website yesterday. It's close, but I changed the format and the fund balances tab. Excuse me, because I am proposing a change in how we do our fund balances. It'll provide better transparency and accountability, and for long-term, better long-term forecasting of our needs, especially on the capital side. So I'd like to walk through this. This is again my proposal, and then we can discuss what this looks like. So instead, previously, everything's been lumped into one reserve fund with different buckets, if you will. It is very difficult to track those buckets. They haven't been funded individually that I've ever found. I tried to find some of those when I was proposing the ILA. Dawn does not know where they're at. She knows everything. And so I'm proposing a better way of doing things that is more consistent with most fire departments. And so instead of one reserve fund, I'm proposing having a reserve fund, a benefits fund, and a capital fund. The reserve fund would capture what we need for any rainy day, any unplanned expenses, and you can call it unplanned loss of revenue or natural disaster. Previously we had natural disaster, insurance contingency, and unplanned loss of revenue. And in this case, that's why I struck it out. The rest of them I deleted, but I struck these out because, and I'll tell you why in a second. But basically what I'm proposing is that we have one reserve fund that we put the money into, and then we don't touch it. We don't ever have to touch it unless we have a big issue, and we'll have to put little bits of money in annually as our operating budget increases to make sure that we're properly planning. And in this case, that we have, it's targeted for 5% of the shoreline, our overall expense budget. It's 5%. And that's about $1.8 million for 2024. I'm proposing that we put, we leave $2 million. It's more than the 1.8 million. It's a little bit extra cushion. But we can change that level however you'd like. So I struck out the natural disaster insurance contingency, and I'm moving, and this is all together. I'm moving the 250 and the $200,000 that were allocated to that bucket into the capital budget or capital fund, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. Are there any questions on that piece first?
Looks like just 500,000 going into that capital budget, 2 million is staying.
So actually 450,000 from the natural disaster and insurance contingency, and 500,000 from the unplanned loss of revenue. And so those will go down into the budget below. So the 450, okay, so
So Chief, we can't see how much is coming out,
the 450, it's actually,
transferred out.
what's that?
I can't read the transferred out numbers.
Okay, but
If-
can we not
Okay,
interrupt the
sorry,
chief
sorry.
during a public meeting? Thank you.
So the benefits fund is. Scroll down a little bit. The benefits fund is covering, right now, it's covering our left one liabilities and then employee payouts that I mentioned earlier. And the left one liabilities is actually, it's a little expensive for us right now because we are expending some funds there. So in this case, under the 2024 transfer, the colored column there, we need to transfer in 332,119 for the left one liabilities and 116,689 for our retiree payouts. And that will get us to what is the recommended level for our left one liabilities by the end of 2024, which is the column off to the right, the little over $2 million. And the retiree payouts, I look at that as an in and out fund because it's 94,000 each year linear for the next 4 years, I believe. Okay, so we would have $2 million, a little over $2 million left in that benefits fund. And then finally, we'd have the capital fund, which is where most of the work is going to occur. And where, you know, the biggest fluctuations occur. In the previously, we had a vehicles, hose, other. And then we also had a station 51, 57 and other facility. All those buckets are, you know, well, it's all in the reserve fund, but those I would target as capital projects and purchases. I lumped them together to apparatus, facilities, equipment, and IT, budget. IT, as you all know, the contract is specifically for the contract with Shoreline. The IT costs, AV costs, those are on North Shore to pay per the contract. So I've targeted those there. I am not planning on putting any money into IT because I look at that again as an in and out on an annual basis, depending on the needs. We could put money in there if you'd like. So, but anyway, as far as the apparatus, these are all numbers that these are what I'm proposing. One of the problems that we've had is that we do not have a good capital replacement strategy, especially when it comes to apparatus. The RCL study did a great job of identifying all the facilities and all the different pieces of equipment, but it was funded at 10% of what it needed to be funded. So what I'm proposing, and I'm going to work with Chief Hochstein on this, and this is a high priority for us, is as soon as possible to get you a proper 20-year replacement strategy so that I can't just say, oh, $1.3 million, that it would actually be a very specific target with a specific annual allocation that goes into each of these different funds, apparatus, facilities and equipment. And again, not on IT unless you'd like me to put some of them into there. It's just not, I don't believe that it's necessary, So in this case, I'm targeting 1.3 million in the apparatus fund. And that means then we need to transfer in the 1.7 million in addition to the other transfers that we have coming in. And then on the facilities, that we should have at least 300,000. I actually think this is light. In the facilities fund, but again, until we've done a proper, production of the new plan, I'm just putting 300,000 in and 200,000 for equipment. Looking at, and that might be actually a little heavy even, but it's nice to have some money in the equipment side. Because sometimes the equipment, when equipment breaks, some of the equipment is very expensive to replace. With all that said, so this is where it all kind of reconciles. These are the totals here, the transfers in from up above and down below, and I'll show you that in a second too. The other revenues down here, which I'll show you that here in a second too. The total transfers needed is about a little over $2 million. This will leave about, at the end of 2024, with the expenditures that we've budgeted for, about almost $5.9 million in a combination of the reserve, benefits, and capital fund, which it could all be used for whatever we need to, if we needed to. As far as, you could pull from, like, say, the reserve fund, if all of a sudden we had a big expense that we needed to fund in our capital fund. But the idea is to fund each of these different funds, each of these different funds should be at a level that's commensurate with the long-term needs. Reserve shouldn't be touched. Benefits will be touched every year to cover our level one expenditures and to maintain whatever that recommended level is. But capital will go up and down quite a bit each year, but will be in a 20-year replacement strategy that'll get, assessed inflation compounded in. I shared with you what I developed for Shoreline, and that I started to develop for the North Shore equipment side last year. So down below, and thanks Commissioner Webster for identifying some of the things that would give better transparency and tracking of these things. I'm going to talk about the other revenues first. Under the other revenues, we have the NKCTC office rental and facility investment fee. In 2024, it's 40,000 and change that the consortium will be paying for wear and tear on 51 and rental of the office space upstairs. In addition to that, I'm tracking now the money that was just being would be just transferred. Now we're tracking it with an estimate of what that facility investment fee is. The facility investment fee is to pay for the station 251, the outbuilding here. It's estimated on 20 students per year coming through the academy, and a surcharge per capita on those academy students. Okay, and so that totals in estimated at 20 people for next year. That and the 40,000 of the office rental is the 62,837. We are estimating also that we will make about $80,000 in reserve fund interest this next year, which which had in previous versions been in the summary tab. I put it here because it's a reserve fund interest and it can be reinvested into the capital funds, on an annual basis.
Chief, real quick, for those listening or who may not understand, NKCTC is
North King County Transit Consortium.
So that's Shoreline, North Shore, Bothell.
Correct. And their offices are here. And then the last thing that I talk about on this tab is the general expense fund. We also, not as much as Shoreline, but we also are heavy on cash reserves in our general expense fund. I'm also planning on pulling some of the money out of there, about 1.1 million, to help fund the other capital projects that we have targeted. So and you can look at in that others, there is a sheet in your other packet that tracks, I think it's the very last page. It's not on there. It tracks what we've got in our general fund and, and the target. And I believe that we have extra funds in there. I should have, put a copy of there so you guys can see. But And so I believe that we have about 1.1 million that we could transfer out. And still have a little over 4 million left at the end of next year, this column here. That would cover the 25% of our overall operating budget, plus an extra 700,000 of buffer. We don't necessarily need all 25% necessarily to get to the first half tax collection, because we would still get some revenues from BLS transports and GMT now that it's coming in. But I don't like planning on those things, necessarily. So this is the same approach that I have with Shoreline, which is 25. You have it as a resolution of 25%. I'm doing 25% plus 700,000 for extra buffer. Again, so that you don't ever have to touch the reserve fund. That's the plan, is that you never have to touch the reserve fund. Any questions on any of this?
The only question I have, we talked about transfer. We're transferring these funds into the general fund or the budget, or where does this transfer go?
We would, if you guys are okay with this, I would direct the King County to establish 2 more funds for us. We would have our reserve fund, a benefits fund, and a capital fund. And we would make the transfers necessary to fund each of those to these levels.
Okay.
And so when I talk about a transfer out, it would actually be an interfund transfer out of the reserve, out of the general expense fund into the capital fund.
Maybe North Shore, it's still North Shore, but King County holds the money.
Yeah,
And any interest or whatever. which
Yeah.
is Minimal, but it does stay in.
well, yeah, I mean, each of those
I'm
funds.
just trying to
will
clear
generate-
this up to the public.
Yeah, each of those funds will generate interest. We don't get a good interest rate.
We don't, but.
But each of those, but what that will do is that we'll have money in the capital fund targeted for these different things. So that we have accountability and transparency when we say the rescue or the next aid car, engine, or HVAC unit, or whatever it is, that we put the money aside, to build up that fund. And then, and then when it's there, when we need to make the purchase. And so that fund will go up and down every year. And sometimes on big years, it goes down, up and down. Shoreline spent over $4 million on apparatus, last year. It took a big hit.
We did 2 a year ago or 2 years ago.
So, yeah, I mean, so it just, but if you plan for it over 20 years, it's a rolling 20-year plan. And it has to be updated because, the inflation rate has skyrocketed, so that has affected everything. And supply chain issues and so forth, but that's what I'm proposing. And this will give us better accountability and transparency. I've said it a number of times, but I think there's quite a few of you that were asking for, well, what's in these different buckets? How, what's been set aside for this? There hasn't been anything. This will be able to allow us to do that. We still have an internal document that under apparatus, under facilities, under equipment, that has all the details behind it, and it'll all feed into that category under the capital budget. So now I'd like to go back to the summary tab, which basically the things that are in the rest of this document feed back into this tab. Again, the suggestion was to be able to track the revenues better. So I'll start at the top because it was a big increase from last week. The transfer to Shoreline, it should probably relabel that, because that should probably say SFD, contribution to SFD operations. It's at 13.6 million. You may recall it was just over 12 million before, but that was because I had offset this number with the revenues. I'm tracking the full cost, but the revenues are down below, which I'll walk through all this too. The rest of it's the same as far as the expenses. On the revenues, here's the 3 that were in the, well, they still are in the Shoreline budget, and we collect these funds for North Shore, and that's the offset or some of the offset of the cost, and why the transfer to Shoreline isn't that full cost. It's those revenues that come out of it. So these first 3, are collected by Shoreline. That's why I put the asterisk on it with a note down here below. Then the transfer out that I just was mentioning, you know, out of the general fund, out of the reserve fund. The general fund interest, I was able to look it up, you know, we asked, Dawn asked the county to give us an estimate on what that is. And it was, it's 115,000 so far this year. We are gonna be decreasing that fund next year, so I put in 120,000. It's just an estimate. Miscellaneous revenue, the allowable levy, we did get updated numbers, this morning, yesterday. And our went up by $6,000, so I updated that number and our AV in our AV tab. So it basically it allowed us to lower the benefit charge down to 7.5 million, which equates to $1.13 of equivalent levy rate. Which and funds if we do everything that I proposed, that's what our rate is. Any changes obviously to this would affect that. What this means for our AV, our equivalent levy rate and our percentage, it's this is the number that we have to be paying attention to, our benefits charge percentage of our operating budget, which is at 57.7% now. That's why we need to do a little bit next year. If we are likely to see AV drop again next year. We will be able to get 1% on our property tax levy side. And then if AV drops, we're going to be right up against our cap, and we won't be, and any AV drop would negatively impact our ability, you know, we'd have to cut things. Staffing or I don't know, it would take some significant, you know, work to figure out what we were going to cut. So that's it. I've worked over the last week to try and capture all the stuff that you guys were looking for out of this last meeting, updated with all the numbers that we have, which helped. It dropped it a little bit. We were at $1.14 in the previous updated version. Now we're at $1.13. But what would you like to dive into deeper, or do you have questions?
I'm gonna take a look at my notes here.
Oh, I can, well. That's good. Do you want me to stop sharing, or do you?
I think at this point, we don't, until we have the public comment, I think we'll still keep sharing. But I think based on your presentation and based on conversations I've had with you, I have a good understanding of what you're proposing. I mean, essentially, we're gonna create some separate funds as opposed to our single reserve fund that is everything lumped together, so we can track the separate categories independently. And we're gonna use some money out of our existing reserve fund and out of our existing general fund to help create those separate funds. And that based on that revenue and based on the budget that you presented, I understand where we're looking at in terms of levy and benefit charge, so I'm comfortable with it.
I just want to stress again that it's painful this year. Well, painful. 2024 will be painful. 2025 will be painful. 2026, hopefully not as much. But as we catch up, we've got to get over this hump, get caught up, and then we can work on getting back down. You know, we can lower the levy rate again. But right now, we have to address some of the things that we discussed last week in the capital fund and so forth. So, you know, it's not happy about it. It was a bit of a shock to me when I did all the numbers, and I was like, it wasn't what I wanted to do. But I also have a responsibility to make sure that our staff are equipped, you know, correctly, that we can operate, we can keep the lights on, that the generator actually turns on when we have a power outage, that the HVAC works. I mean, these things, we have to catch up.
Commissioner Wong, I just was looking at the agenda here, and it looks like we've kind of jumped to board discussion and review, which is 4.6. So we've seen the presentation of the budget, 4.3. 4.4 is recommendations for our tax levy and benefit charge, and then there's a time for public comment. So if we approve the agenda, we should probably adhere closely to that.
So one of the things that I would thank you, and one of the things that, depending on the decisions that are made here tonight and the recommendation, I'd go back through, make sure everything's cleaned up and everything's accurate and all that, and prepare resolutions for next week. That's what we need to be working on. And we have to have our resolutions to the county by the 30th.
So Chief, the recommendations for levy and benefit charge is within these documents I've seen, but
Essentially, yeah.
for the public,
Yeah, if you're good with this, I'll prepare the resolutions and it'll detail.
well, what I'm saying is that following our agenda, it has the presentation of that, then there's a time for public comment. But then there's time for us for discussion, which is what we're doing now. So
Yeah, you can open up for public comment. For sure, I mean.
Okay,
You just have what are the staff recommendations for tax levy and benefit?
So the recommendations is to set the and this will probably change even a little bit more, but we need to set our resolutions and everything for this next week. But AD is not set yet. That continues to fluctuate all the way up until they confirm it. But right now, our recommendation is that we set our tax levy at $5,914,790
mhm.
and our benefit charge at $7,520,000. And actually technically we should also talk about the the bond, and that is at $1,434,250.
That's what we owe on it.
Hmm?
Is that what we owe on that one?
that's
Yes.
the excess that
It
we.
is, and it sunsets in 2027.
Right. That's good. And that's the other part, we have excess bond. If we have to do something with our air conditioning unit, so we can.
We could.
Yeah.
But that would, that we would have to go, if it's. You can do an LTGO, that would be a commissioner approved one, as opposed to a UTGO, which would be, I'm sorry, limited tax general obligation bond and an unlimited tax general
So
obligation.
there's ways we can deal with it if it. And
Correct.
not upset our.
And a UTGO requires the vote of the public, but an LTGO you can do as a board.
Right.
But then we make the payments out of our operating
I
budget.
don't know, but that allows us the opportunity with this year. Jumping in on the BAC, we know we have to pay for that, and
Correct.
we are gonna do it, so, okay.
Okay, so sticking with the agenda, I'm gonna open up public comment. I don't know if there's anyone else that would like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Lisa, do you want to just preface how much time people have for comments?
Yeah, they have 3 minutes for comments.
Okay.
For all public comments. You want to go ahead?
Sure.
Can you introduce yourself for us?
My name is Rick Hawley. I am indeed a resident of Kenmore. I've been asked to read this on behalf of someone who cannot be here tonight because of scheduling conflict. Roger Collins by name. And he writes, "Dear North Shore Fire Department Commission, I have had a chance to review your 2024 proposed budget and would like to offer some insight from the perspective of an elected commissioner from a fellow North King County Fire District. Unfortunately, I have a meeting tonight that does not allow me to attend North Shore's meeting in person, so I have put my thoughts on paper to share. I have worked closely with the North Shore Fire Department in the past as both Woodinville Fire and Rescue and North Shore Fire Department had considered consolidating operations. The North Shore Fire Department has always provided quality fire and medical services to the citizens of Kenmore and Lake Forest Park at a very reasonable cost. North Shore maintained top-line equipment, a modern headquarters station with the best training ground in the area and fully funded reserve account. During North Shore's Fire Service contract proposal review, Shoreline's Chief Cowan vowed that he would be just as cost efficient as the East Side Fire and Rescue proposal. Unfortunately for the taxpayers of North Shore, that vow has not been fulfilled. Instead, the budget in front of you increases taxes by 50% or more and drains the North Shore Fire Department reserve funds. The notes in Chief Cowan's 2024 budget proposal admit that this increase is not enough and that more capital spending will be necessary in 2025. He is recommending a levy lift election in 2024 so that the department can collect even more money in the future. I know from firsthand experience that Woodinville Fire and Rescue's operating expenses are in stark contrast to the proposed North Shore budget. Woodinville contracts with East Side Fire and Rescue in much the same manner as North Shore contracts with Shoreline. The citizens of Woodinville receive excellent service as the Board of Commissioners demand. The firefighters have modern equipment and excellent facilities, while the district maintains extremely strong reserves. This is all accomplished in a financially responsible manner with no bond debt. The budget before you is in stark contrast to this. Through the efficiencies gained with the contract with East Side Woodinville Fire and Rescue's overall tax collection amount will actually decrease by 1.9% in 2024, despite inflationary pressures that not seen in years. Woodinville Fire and Rescue Commissioners are fulfilling their responsibilities to the public that elected them by balancing the requirements of high-quality service.
And we've got your 3 minutes have been taken up, and it looks like Ms. Cassover would like to speak, if I'm seeing that correctly.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you're able to hear me. This is Councilmember Cassover from the City of Lake Forest Park. And I want to commend the chief in reorganizing the budget. It seems to me that it's a far more responsible thing to do to break out what was a big bucket of reserve funds into the actual uses that those funds have, I guess, in the past been put to, and that you plan to put them to in the future. Difficult for those of us in the community to know what the real needs of the department are, and we have to trust that both the chief and the commissioners have a good and full understanding of the needs, particularly the capital needs. It is not unusual for many public agencies to underestimate their capital needs over time. And it seems to me that it has come as a bit of a surprise to many people that the North Shore Fire Department had capital needs that in fact were not taken care of in the way they should have in the past. So again, I commend the chief for doing the work to really understand what the future holds and what the department needs. So from what I've been able to understand in this budget, I believe it's a responsible budget, and I would encourage the commission to pass it. I would also encourage the chief and the commission to be somewhat more thoughtful in presenting the budget so that those of us who are lay people when it comes to fire departments have a little more understanding of what kinds of needs you are proposing to fund here. A little more kind of explanation of some things could be helpful, and also to include what the current levy rate is in contrast to the levy rate that you're proposing. So all in all, I'm pleased with what I've heard, and thank you very much for the work you've put into this.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Can the chief, what is our current?
87 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Plus the go bond.
That's plus the general obligation bond, which is probably in the neighborhood of I think it's another, I want to say about another 10, 12 cents. 12 cents. I think
That's just for the public, so.
Okay.
I could look it up.
Steve,
Okay. And let's see, it looks like.
Chief, it's Dawn. Oh, it's Dawn.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know on your slide with the bond payment, I don't know why I didn't notice it when you showed me your budget before, but on my sheet that I sent you, the bond payment for 2024 is $1,499,500. So it's your number is the payment from 2023.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to throw that in there so it's fully transparent that the bond payment for this year, for 24, for next year is a little bit higher than what you have on the worksheet right now.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Should be something that the rest of us.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would just like to comment too that, to address, Councilmember Cassover's questions. The average equivalent levy rate for the past decade is, $1.14. This year, we're coming in at $1.13. And, for the average, assessed value in Kenmore Lake Forest Park, for a single residence home of about $800,000. That's a difference of roughly $216 over 12 months, or $18 per month in additional taxes this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Mr. Hess had his hand up if you wanted to have your 3 minutes. I believe you're on mute. There we
My
go.
name is Paul Hess. I'm a resident of Kenmore for the last 18 and a half years. I live at 19235 73rd Avenue Northeast in the Hacienda. I have followed the machinations of this fire district from building a new building, which there was a lot of dysfunction on the board that time. And the taxpayers paid dearly for that. I lived next door to Ron Gerke and followed that fiasco rather well. The message that I have for you tonight is respect the taxpayer. The chief, who is paid a lot of money, I've heard everything from $350,000 a year. This is the most convoluted governance mechanism that I have seen. I'm 75 years old. I've been around politics for a long time. I've been a state legislator in another state for 14 years. And the way I understand this, and the commissioner from Lake Forest Park is correct, you desperately need to communicate with the public. It is very hard to understand this budgets. So this is my understanding of your governance mechanism. You had this contract with Shoreline. They have an elected board, then you're an elected board, but your responsibility is to the taxpayers in Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. But the chief, who you do not directly hire, but apparently tells you what he needs and what he wants, you don't have that. You have a contract. And the chief promised when this war was going on about whether North Shore should stay alone or join up with another entity like Eastside Fire and Rescue, or join up with Shoreline, the governing mechanism leaves a lot to be desired. Here is what I would suggest. Don't buy a heavy rescue vehicle. The one you've got, you've only used a handful of times. Postpone that. Take a look at it. The training center. Why in the world do the taxpayers here in Lake Forest Park and Kenmore have to pay for almost $1 million for an additional training facility? Don't do that now. Don't raid your reserve funds. You're doing that, and taxes are going up. We just heard it a moment ago. And frankly, I have 22 tenants in the city of Kenmore. I have 8 rentals. I pass everything on to them that you do on this board. Same with city councils, same with hospital district, doesn't matter. The renter gets hosed.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Your 3 minutes is up, and I believe it's Ms. Valenzuela. If you wanted your 3 minutes to speak, you can start now.
Thank you, Stacy Valenzuela, Kenmore. I agree with a lot of what Mr. Hess has just said, and I'm shocked about it. But I also am concerned about the consortium's budget and why they haven't, since they've been around for years, themselves planned for long-term so that they could cover the cost of the outbuilding, as well as the overhang or whatever is supposed to be at a cost. I'm concerned that there's only 20, the chief is saying only 20 people that go through that training, which I understood there was a lot more, because East Side Fire last year went through a lot of the training, as well as Shoreline, North Shore, and Bothell. So where's all the funds that were supposed to be set aside for that facility, and why is North Shore still covering it? And like I said, I think the rescue is a want, not a need. I think the changing of the facility at Lake Forest Park is a want, not a need. I think the increase in changing the building at Shoreline is a want, not a need. I think the two needs at North Shore building, building 51, should be and is a need, and that needs to be done immediately. And I think those are the things that need to be separated in the budget, as well as what is a need and what is just a want from the chief to do. I think also hiring 12 new people is way too much until there is another facility up at Station 54. Maybe a couple people might be good, but taking care of all this and raising the taxes on people when the city, the county, and everybody else is raising everything, $218 is half of a food bill for the month. How much in the taxes is that going to take away from people being able to pay their property tax to where they'll be priced out just for your wants? I don't think it's a necessity. And I think that really comes down to you have to think of others and choose between priority and needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Mr. Mayor, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Chief, there's questions that I've asked that nobody's answered. First of all, why is not North Shore Fire Department contract paying 15% increase? And you said in your budget that it's only 8.65 for Shoreline. Should be the same. I'd like you to answer that question. Why is the Shoreline Fire Department has not reduced the battalion chief to 4 as demanded by the contract? You're supposed to have that done by June of 2023. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars going out the door against the provisions of the contract. I still don't understand why you're spending $2 million on a rescue vehicle. Why it's an emergency need for you right now. You have time to really sit down and let the public weigh in on this. I think you should do that. North Shore Fire Department, Commissioner, we did fully fund our reserves. The reason they don't look so funded now is because you want to build a new training building. You want to buy a $2 million rescue truck. You want to spend a lot of money that's not necessary. This has been Venezuela said wants versus needs. And then second, the $1.13 of rate that you're quoting, that's not a correct rate, because you are taking money from the general expense fund, putting it into the capital fund for purposes of the training building, for purposes of the rescue vehicle, for other stuff. That's money that you're subterfuge in reducing what you're asking the public out there for money. Because when you take money from our reserve fund that you said wasn't adequately funded and put it into the general reserve or put it toward these capital items that weren't even in the budget to begin with, that's a tax increase. I'd say the equivalent tax increase, you're in the $1.24 range, actually, if you take all the way the money you moved around. Anyway, that's my opinion. I hope the board listens. There's stuff you don't need to do. You can wait till next year to decide on the training building on the rescue truck. Let the people weigh in. You're pushing this. There's no emergency for those things. None.
Chief, I'll address the.
Thank you. Can you pause just for 1 second? I want to just remind the public that we aren't actually allowed to answer questions off the cuff that the public proposes to us. Just like we're not allowed to ask when the public has their 3 minutes, we're not allowed to come back and ask specific questions regarding that. So if something isn't answered, it's because we're giving you your time for your free speech and we're not really allowed to address that. Saying that, Chief, was there anything that you did want to address for Commissioner Pratt Speaks?
If it's okay with the board, I could go through and review what we decided on last week on the bigger purchases
Mhm.
in the capital budget. So maybe that would, because some people weren't here last week.
Correct. Go ahead, Commissioner Pratt, if you can hold that thought.
Yeah, I will, I'll reserve my comments until board discussion time.
Okay.
And I think it would be good to have the chief kind of review some of those things as we transition into board discussion.
Perfect. I agree, because that was the thought I had as well. Yes.
We have one more raised hand.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, I apologize. Mr. Lozier, you've got your 3 minutes to speak if you wish.
Thank you very much. I'm the president of Local 1760 for Shoreline Fire Department, which also represents the North Shore Fire Department. It's my understanding I have 4 minutes as the union president to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to.
Okay, that's fine.
So first of all, I wanted to thank you guys very much for the opportunity to talk. There's been a lot of stuff that's been said by either current or previous politicians. So sometimes that information can be misleading because it's, in my opinion, politically based. So for all the other people who are watching or participating, just be kind of aware of sometimes information, in my opinion, can be misleading. I do want to say thank you very much for the commissioners who are holding their job right now. They were accused of, in my opinion, accused last week of being nefarious, etc., for literally having knowledge and experience associated with the fire department. And I think that's a very important thing for commissioners to have, is actual knowledge and experience of how a fire department runs. So thank you all for taking the times out of your lives to help better represent your community. I do also want to address, Chief Cowan is put into this budget a lot of different things in which have represented the lack of items that have been maintained and the illusion of kind of what has been previously communicated of how well the North Shore Fire Department had been set up. Obviously, Chief Cowan last meeting has talked about multiple different things that are failing within the department and are now having to be addressed. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that Chief Cowan has talked about, which are positive things in which he has a vision for the North Shore Fire Department. And that's something for the commissioners to weigh out as far as what is considered something that it can be funded now versus later. But Chief Cowan, I've heard from multiple different chiefs. He is one of the hardest working fire chiefs they've ever seen. So, his budget may not be exactly what everybody wants to hear, but at the same time, he is a person who is trying to represent the public to the best possible way. And that comes with a budget. I know personally the man works significantly hard to get everybody a budget in which is going to make people happy. Obviously, it's not going to make everybody happy. And again, that comes to the North Shore commissioners to make some of those decisions. I did want to kind of address one thing that is sometimes hard for people to understand. When it comes to hiring people, it's not straight out hiring additional bodies to fill additional rigs. Sometimes that hiring is associated with reducing the amount of overtime, which in return saves the public money because it reduces how much they're paying out. So they're paying equivalently a straight dollar amount for an employee rather than time and a half, which is the overtime rate. So that's really kind of where Chief Cowan is looking at and why he's trying, in my opinion, from what I know about it. So in a way, he's actually trying to save the public money when it comes to that. So that is all I have to say. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to board discussion and review of the budget proposal, but can I put a pause in that while we go over what we set aside last week and what we're focusing on so that the public can hear all that again?
I appreciate that because maybe this will help people feel more comfortable with the wants versus needs and so forth. I'm only gonna talk about the big ticket items and facilities. Obviously, the big one is the rescue, which last week we decided to defer the cost of that for 3 years. We're still gonna make the purchase, but it's not gonna be here until probably late 26 or 27. It's a 3-year build plus 3.5 year build. The bill will not come due until that point, which is when we would make the payment, so we can budget and for over the next 3 or 4 years to make that payment. As far as facilities go, we did approve replacing the HVAC boiler at 51 here. We did not approve the lighting, the improved lighting here. We did approve the 51 server room suppression. Right now, it's being protected by, a water sprinkler system. So if we have a trigger, we would lose that all the electronics in that room. Let's see, the outbuilding here at 51 in the carport. We're still waiting for bids on that. And the cost of that would be repaid by the consortium, academy attendees over time. We did approve the 57 generator replacement that was failing or is failing. We did approve a increased generator fuel tank here at 51 so that we could actually operate the generator for longer periods of time. We did not approve the 51 fueling station here or extra refrigerators. We are on my mattresses and recliners. We are budgeting $100,000 for the 54 repair. I say that amount because we absolutely have no idea what we're gonna spend there. We did not approve the modification to station 57. We did include and approve the 57 station 57 HVAC replacement, and we did not approve the station 57 remodel assessment. So I just wanted there were things that we have gone through and looked at what our needs are and believe that we have needs captured in here. Some of these things may get approved in 2025 or they may get pushed out further or not approved at all, depending. But I just wanted to assure people that are listening and here that we are trying to focus on the things that we need and the things that have not been properly addressed over a long period of time.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Commissioner Pratt, I'm going to give you the floor since you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Commissioner Wong. So I just first like to start by thanking Dave Marin for his long-term vision of consolidation of the departments of the North King County and for working diligently over years to recognize the importance of and efficiencies achieved by consolidating organizations. I know that it didn't go the way that he wanted it to, but I feel like we're in a much better space. So when I came onto this board in late 2019, I didn't really have an understanding of the dysfunction that existed within the organization, because what I saw from the outside were excellent firefighters who were committed to their craft, who were dedicated to serving the citizens of Kenmore and Lake Forest Park, who provided a very high level of service. In spite of what was going on the board, we had the resignation under protest of 2 sitting board members. We had 6 different fire chiefs in the course of 3 years. Imagine the details that get missed when you have that rapid of turnover. Okay, so we're in a much healthier space now. This board is cohesive, it gets along. We have trust in our fire chief, even though we're having some growing pains, right? I was as shocked by the capital expenses as the rest of the board was, and as I'm imagining all of our citizens were. But these capital expenses are the result of artificially keeping tax rates down. And how did the North Shore Fire Department artificially keep tax rates down? It pressured its fire chiefs to create budgets that were artificially low at the expense of firefighter safety. So we had firefighters in violation of NFPA standard who only had one set of bunker gear instead of two, so that when they came back from a fire, they had to borrow somebody else's bunker gear that wasn't fit for them. We had no ability to get onto Lake Washington to execute a rescue, even though we have the amount of lakefront property that we have. We had IT issues that we had no backup for our no storage backup for our data, and a cooling and heating system in that space that was woefully insufficient. The fire chief during that time had to go in and empty 2 buckets a day of water as part of his duties because the system in there was so poor. We have a rescue that was underutilized. Why was it underutilized? Why did it run so few calls? It ran so few calls because the fire chiefs, under pressure from this board, refused to send technical rescue technicians to appropriate training. And when they didn't get that training, they cycled off of that team, which left that apparatus sitting unused. Okay. And when we don't have the appropriate personnel to staff it, neighboring jurisdictions took it off of their run card because it wasn't staffed with rescue technicians. Okay, so now we have a chief who's committed to the training necessary to keep that apparatus staffed and up to date. Other ways that we kept taxes artificially low, by not updating our alerting system, by not funding capital programs so that we have an HVAC system that now needs to be repaired, a generator that now needs to be repaired. Okay, so and the list goes on and on. It's being resolved. It's painful. It's painful to have to pay this price, but it's going to be resolved. We're in a better place. We have an excellent plan for the future, and we're providing a higher level of service to our citizens. Right? Instead of sharing a fire chief for a period of time and a deputy chief, instead of sharing fire prevention duties with the city of Bothell, we have dedicated, robust executive staff that provide for our needs. And that is a good thing, but it is not free. It is not inexpensive. So what I need everyone to recognize too, citizens, is that I'm also a citizen of this community, as are the rest of our board members. We pay the same taxes that everyone else pays, and we don't take this lightly. It's hard to raise the taxes for myself and for the citizens of this community. Okay, but I do it because I want to make the citizens of Kenmore and Lake Forest Park safer. I want our firefighters to be safer, and I want to provide the highest level of service possible. And that's my motivation for every decision that I make. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, I have some comments on the budget presentation as well. So I was also concerned when I learned about, in particular, the level of capital costs, because we had not had an exact price tag on those items. But, you know, over the course of these discussions and learning about our reserve funds and what contributions were actually made to those funds for what categories, essentially what we learned is that even though we had a resolution defining particular reserves, we were not adhering to that resolution because the supporting detail of what the cost of these items that work had not been done. So now we're dealing with a situation where we do have the cost of those items, and what we're trying to do is responsibly move forward and address our needs in terms of saving appropriately for future apparatus and taking care of needed facility repairs. In terms of how we are going about this, I think what we're doing is we're now taking a thoughtful look at our reserves and proposing to put them into more logical categories where you can track exactly what is being saved for and what money is truly in that account to be used, for instance, for fire apparatus, which means things like fire engines, ladder trucks, rescues, what is going to be used for a facility. So I think that's a logical approach. And I think that when we have the details behind it, when we start saving appropriately for those, we'll be in much better shape. In terms of the transfers from the different accounts, it can be a little esoteric for those who are unaware of how our accounts work. But essentially, we have consider it like a savings account and a checking account. We have a general expense fund with King County. We have a reserve fund. We're going to break that reserve fund into some separate categories. And right now, we have a little more than what we need in our expense fund. So we're going to transfer some of that into our savings account, our reserve fund, so that we don't have to just generate it based on tax collections. And we're going to reallocate some categories within our savings account into these new accounts. So essentially, we're not, there's no sleight of hand at all. We're trying to use the money that we have appropriately so that we only need to collect the funds that we need to address these needed items. So personally, now that I've delved into it, I have a good understanding of what we're doing here, and I believe this is a responsible and fair budget proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Did you have anything?
I believe a lot of the budget, what the explanations are good. I have reservations about the rescue, and I'm glad that that's deferred to next year. But we also have costs. We need to keep a capital reserve funds for apparatus, and I look forward to the chief for putting together a 20-year plan. Whether that happens, hopefully the next year.
It'll happen.
Yeah, we need to have that, and I think that my one reservation is that I wish this could have happened 3 months ago instead of. So we're going to definitely have to work on our budgets, even though the numbers won't be in, but try to get this to us 2 or 3 months earlier, or 2 months earlier, at least so the public can be involved more, although it's pretty transparent. So that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Byers? No comment. Okay. Okay. So are we concluding or continuing our public hearing?
I'm comfortable with completing it and making a decision to move forward with the recommendations of the chief.
I think the only question I have is the chief said that there's going to be some final refinement of numbers at some last minute.
Yeah, just I've been working right up until about 4 o'clock when I started coming down here. I want to, and if there's any AV changes, if there's anything that I find in cleaning up, but these should be pretty much where we're looking at.
So I don't see that there's going to be substantial changes, and I feel like we've had the ability to present the budget and we've received feedback on the budget, so I would be comfortable with us concluding the hearing.
I'm good with concluding the hearing.
Do we need to change anything with the resolution to change the way that the fund is?
Well, if you're in agreement, what I will do is prepare resolutions for your consideration for the week from tonight. That would, that meets the needs of what we have to give to the county, not only for that, but also for the resolution establishing the different funds, reserve fund, benefits fund, capital fund, because we will have to give that to the county as well to establish those funds.
So do we make a motion on this?
I think so.
If you guys are in agreement with the board, with the proposed budget, then yes.
I move forward with the budgetary proposal as presented.
I'll second that.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Nays?
Nay.
Okay.
Rick Webster.
So we will, I'm not sure I'm gonna say this right, but we're gonna move forward for the motion and the vote.
You see it. Pass 4-1. Yeah,
Oh, it passes 4-1, excuse me, okay. Okay, so now we have an executive session. And then after that, there's a setting of a future meeting. So executive session, we're expecting maybe 20 minutes.
15 minutes, no decision.
Okay, okay, so maybe 15 minutes and then people will be welcome back in.
So what will happen is I'm going to pause the recording. I'm gonna put everyone that's online back into the waiting room. That may take me a couple of minutes, and then we'll start the 15 minutes. And then for everyone here, you're welcome to wait in the lobby and we'll welcome you back in 15 minutes, or you can go, but feel free to.
Can I ask the chair, is there gonna be any visits done after the executive session? Are you gonna? adjourn?
No,
The only business will be just setting the agenda for future meetings.
Okay.
correct.
And
Thank
then
you.
we'll adjourn. Okay, so I will pause the recording now.
So what executive
Good evening. So we are returning from executive session. The executive session was pursuant to RCW 42.3.1101G to discuss the performance of an employee. And we are returning after 15 minutes and it is 6:42 p.m.
And Amy, if you don't mind going over the future meeting agenda, and then that'll wrap up our last item here.
Yes, so the next meeting will be a special meeting next Tuesday, November 21st at 5 p.m. That meeting will be to pass the board resolutions related to fire benefit charge, the 2024 budget, and the reserve fund tracking. I'm not sure the name of it.
Establishing.
The establishment.
The establishing of a benefits fund, a capital fund. We also have to establish the fire levy as well. There will be 4 resolutions, I believe,
Okay.
for you.
And will they be posted on 24 hours online?
Yeah.
The resolution?
Yes,
Yeah, we can.
that'd be good. Thank you.
Okay. And then after that, the next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, December 5th at 5 p.m. It'll include the standard agenda items as well as a report from the subcommittee for Station 54, subcommittee for the outbuildings at Station 51, a discussion of policy 1600, which is commissioner expenses, the travel forms, and then I wasn't sure if policy 1400 also wanted to be looked at. That's about how what we have as a policy for posting materials to the web to AV capture. I don't know if that wants to be discussed.
Do we want to discuss that? I think we can hold that one until after the first of the year.
Okay.
I think.
I agree.
And then I
We
have
have
a
enough.
note of discussion of the reserve fund and resolution, but is that what's
That's, yeah.
coming up next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna say meeting is adjourned unless anybody has anything else. Okay, meeting adjourned.